Jeffrey Rourke wiped the grease from his hands with a shop rag, checking the clock on the garage wall. 5:30. Viola expected them for dinner at 6, and Leora hated being late. He grabbed his jacket from the workbench, nodding to the custom motorcycle frame he'd been welding. Tomorrow he'd finish the exhaust system for the vintage Triumph rebuild. The shop felt like home more than his actual house did these days. Here, problems had logical solutions. Metal bent according to physics. Engines ran when properly tuned. No hidden agendas or emotional landmines. The ride to Viola's house took 12 minutes through Eugene's tree-lined streets. Jeffrey pulled his truck into the driveway behind Leora's sedan. She was already inside, probably helping with dinner. Viola Greaves had insisted on these Sunday meals since he'd married her daughter 3 years ago. Jeffrey didn't mind. Viola treated him better than his own mother ever had. He paused before getting out of the truck, watching through the kitchen window. Leora moved around the small space with practiced ease, gesturing as she talked. Viola stood at the stove, nodding but not smiling. Even from outside, Jeffrey could sense the tension between them. "You're on time," Viola said when he walked through the front door. She stood at the stove, stirring something that smelled like rosemary and garlic. "Leora's setting the table. Need help? Sit. You work too much." Jeffrey settled into his usual chair at the kitchen table. Viola moved with purpose around her small kitchen, gray hair pulled back in a practical bun. At 59, she kept herself sharp, ran a small accounting firm from the converted garage behind the house. Spoke her mind. Never played games. "Something smells wrong with the gravy," Leora called from the dining room. "Nothing wrong with it," Viola replied, not looking up from the pot. Jeffrey caught the edge in her voice. These small tensions had been building for months. Leora would make subtle criticisms. Viola would push back. Neither woman ever addressed the real issue, whatever it was. "How's the Patterson bike coming?" Viola asked Jeffrey. "Good. Should be done by Wednesday. New exhaust system's giving me some trouble, but I'll figure it out." "You always do." Viola ladled gravy into a serving bowl. "That's what I like about you, Jeffrey. You fix things properly. Take your time. Do it right." "How's the Patterson bike coming?" she asked. "Good. Should be done by Wednesday." Leora entered from the dining room, smoothing her hands down her navy dress. "Hi, honey." She kissed Jeffrey's cheek, her lips cool against his skin. "Mom, the table's ready. I used the good china. The everyday plates are fine," Viola said. "It's Sunday dinner. We should make it special. It's just family." Jeffrey watched this exchange with growing unease. Something was happening here that he didn't understand. Leora's smile looked forced. Viola's responses carried an undercurrent of disapproval. They sat down to pot roast and potatoes. The food was excellent, as always. Viola believed in feeding people properly. Thick slices of meat, vegetables that still had some bite to them, gravy rich enough to coat the spoon. Leora talked about her work at the middle school, some difficult students she was counseling. A 12-year-old boy whose parents were going through a messy divorce. "The kid's acting out in class," Leora said, cutting her meat into precise pieces. "Angry. Aggressive. Classic signs of trauma." "What kind of trauma?" Jeffrey asked. "Abuse. Physical, probably emotional. The father's got anger issues." "How do you know that?" "Experience. You learn to read the signs." Leora took a sip of wine. "I've recommended family counseling, but the father refuses to participate." Jeffrey listened, cutting his meat into precise squares. Something about Leora's tone bothered him. Too confident, too sure of her diagnosis based on limited information. "Maybe the father's just stressed," Jeffrey said. "Divorce is hard on everyone." "Abuse is abuse," Leora replied. "Children don't lie about these things." Viola set down her fork. "Children make mistakes, misunderstand things. Not about abuse. People see what they want to see," Viola said, looking directly at her daughter, "especially when it serves their purposes." The conversation stopped abruptly. Leora's face went pale, then flushed red. "What's that supposed to mean?" Leora asked. "Nothing specific," Viola said, but her eyes never left her daughter's face. "Just that jumping to conclusions can be dangerous." Jeffrey felt the temperature in the room drop several degrees. He'd stumbled into something bigger than a simple disagreement about a student case. Viola asked about his business, whether he'd considered hiring help to handle the growing demand. I like working alone, Jeffrey said, grateful for the change of subject. You can't expand if you don't delegate, Leora said, seeming to recover her composure. I keep telling him that. Jeffrey's talented enough to run a real operation, but he's too cautious. Cautious isn't always bad, Viola said. Some things shouldn't be rushed. Trust takes time to build. Easy to destroy. Jeffrey caught the look Viola gave Leora. Not hostile, but cool. Measuring. He'd noticed this tension before, but never understood it. Leora was successful, respected in the community. A school counselor who genuinely seemed to care about kids. What mother wouldn't be proud? I think I'll. Viola stopped mid-sentence. Her hand went to her chest, fingers splaying across her blouse. Mom. Leora leaned forward, her voice sharp with concern. Viola's face went pale, then gray. Sweat beaded on her forehead, despite the cool evening air coming through the open window. I feel. Viola's voice trailed off. Her breathing became shallow, rapid. Jeffrey pushed back from the table, his military training kicking in. Viola, what's wrong? She tried to stand, gripping the edge of the table for support. Her legs buckled. Jeffrey caught her before she hit the ground, his arms going around her thin frame. Call 911, Jeffrey said, easing Viola down to the kitchen floor. Leora fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking as she dialed. Yes, I need an ambulance. My mother's having some kind of attack. Jeffrey checked Viola's pulse at her wrist. Weak, irregular. Her skin felt clammy cold. He tilted her head back, checked her airway. Clear, but her breathing was getting shallower. No pulse, Jeffrey said, moving his fingers to her neck. Nothing. That he positioned his hands on her chest and started compressions. Counted under his breath. 30 compressions, 2 rescue breaths. He'd learned this in the military 15 years ago, but muscle memory took over. Where's the ambulance? He asked, not stopping the compressions. They're coming, Leora said, pacing behind him. 5 minutes out. Jeffrey pressed harder, feeling ribs flex under his palms. Better broken ribs than death. Viola's body was so small, so fragile. He tried not to think about how much force he was using. Come on, Viola, he muttered between compressions. Stay with me. On the 15th cycle, Viola's eyes fluttered open. She grabbed Jeffrey's arm with surprising strength and pulled him close. Her voice was barely a whisper. Run for my daughter. Jeffrey stared at her. What? Viola's other hand moved to her pocket, pulled out her phone. She pressed it into Jeffrey's palm and closed his fingers around it. Hide this, she whispered. Evidence. Viola, what are you talking about? Her grip loosened. Her eyes rolled back. Jeffrey resumed compressions, but he could feel her slipping away. The paramedics arrived 4 minutes later, their equipment clattering through the narrow kitchen doorway. Jeffrey moved aside as they took over, watching them work with professional efficiency. They attached monitors, inserted in 4, used a defibrillator. The kitchen filled with the smell of ozone and fear. How long has she been down? One of the paramedics asked. 8 minutes, Jeffrey said. Maybe 9. They worked on Viola for 20 minutes before loading her into the ambulance. Jeffrey rode with them while Leora followed in her car, her face streaked with tears that looked genuine in the flashing red lights. They could see the hospital. They waited in plastic chairs that smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. The emergency room buzzed with quiet activity. Nurses moved between curtain areas. Machines beeped and hummed. Somewhere a child was crying. Leora cried quietly, tissues crumpled in her hands. She leaned against Jeffrey's shoulder, her body shaking with what looked like grief. She was fine this morning, Leora whispered. We talked about repainting her kitchen. She seemed happy. Jeffrey stared at the linoleum floor, Viola's words echoing in his head. Run for my daughter. In his pocket, her phone felt like a stone. Why would Viola say something like that? What evidence had she been talking about? Mr. Rourke? A doctor in green scrubs approached, his face grave. I'm Dr. Martinez. I'm sorry. We did everything we could. Your mother-in-law suffered massive cardiac arrest. The damage was too extensive. Leora sobbed harder. Jeffrey put his arm around her, but his mind was elsewhere. Viola had been healthy, active. Her last physical had been clean. Heart attacks could happen to anyone, but the timing felt wrong. Was there an underlying condition? Jeffrey asked. We'll know more after the autopsy, Dr. Martinez said. But sometimes these things happen without warning. I'm very sorry for your loss. After the doctor left, Leora turned to Jeffrey. What did she say to you? At the end, Jeffrey met her eyes, searching for something he couldn't name. She said she loved us. Leora nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. She did love us. Both of us. But Jeffrey remembered the coldness in Viola's voice when she talked to Leora during dinner. The tension that had been building for months. The warning she'd given him with her last breath. He squeezed Viola's phone in his pocket and wondered what secrets it might hold. The funeral home smelled like lilies and floor wax. Jeffrey stood beside Leora at the front of the chapel, shaking hands with people he barely knew. Teachers from the middle school, clients from Viola's accounting firm, neighbors who remembered when Leora was young. She was such a good woman, said Mrs. Patterson, whose husband's motorcycle Jeffrey was building. Always helped with the community fundraisers. Thank you, Leora said, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Jeffrey watched his wife accept condolences. Her grief looked perfect, the right amount of tears, the right catch in her voice. But something felt off. Her posture was too controlled. Her responses too practiced. He was thinking like an engineer again, breaking things down into components, analyzing how they fit together. A man Jeffrey didn't recognize entered the chapel. Tall, thin, wearing a rumpled suit that looked borrowed. He had Leora's dark hair and sharp nose. Family resemblance. Leora saw him and froze. The man walked to the casket, stood there for a long moment, then approached them. Leora, he said. Kellen. Her voice was flat. I didn't think you'd come. She was my mother, too. Jeffrey extended his hand. Jeffrey Rourke, Leora's husband. Kellen shook it. His grip was firm, calloused. Kellen Greaves. I haven't heard much about you, Jeffrey said. That's not surprising, Kellen said, looking at Leora. We don't talk much. He lives in Portland, Leora said quickly. Different lives. Kellen studied Jeffrey for a moment. She finally got Mom, too. What's that supposed to mean? Leora asked. Kellen didn't answer. He walked away without another word. Jeffrey watched him leave. The exchange felt loaded with meaning he couldn't grasp. Leora's body language had changed the moment her brother appeared. Defensive. Guilty. What was that about? Jeffrey asked. Kellen's always been dramatic, Leora said. He blames everyone else for his problems. But Jeffrey noticed how her hands shook as she straightened her dress. Jeffrey waited until Tuesday. 3 days after the funeral. 3 days of watching Leora throw herself into work, staying late at the school for counseling sessions and administrative meetings. She said it helped her cope with the grief. The drive to the funeral home felt surreal. Main Street looked the same as always. Coffee shops and bookstores. People going about their normal lives while Jeffrey prepared to violate his mother-in-law's corpse for evidence of a crime he wasn't even sure had happened. He parked behind the building and used the staff entrance. The funeral director, Mr. Jameson, met him in the hallway. I understand you'd like to pay your respects one more time, Jameson said. Of course. Take all the time you need. The viewing room was empty except for Viola's casket. Jeffrey approached slowly, his heart hammering against his ribs. Viola looked smaller than he remembered, her face peaceful in the artificial lighting. Jeffrey pulled out her phone, hands steady despite what he was about to do. The screen was locked, but he remembered the fingerprint sensor. Technology that had seemed convenient just days ago now felt like a violation of the dead. He lifted Viola's cold hand and pressed her index finger to the home button. The phone unlocked with a soft chime that seemed unnaturally loud in the silent room. Jeffrey's stomach clenched as he scrolled through recent messages. Most were routine. Appointment confirmations for her accounting clients. Messages with neighbors about community events. But then he found the thread with Kellen, and his world shifted. Viola, she's setting Jeffrey up. Please warn him. Kellen, what kind of setup? Viola, financial. Maybe worse. I found evidence, Kellen. Go to police. Viola. She threatened to destroy you if I interfere. Claims she has evidence you abused her as kids. Kellen. Fuck. That's a lie. Viola. I know. But people will believe her. She's very convincing. Jeffrey's hands began to shake as he read the timestamps. These messages went back 2 months. Viola had suspected something was wrong long before her death. Viola, I'm documenting everything. If something happens to me, check my cloud account. Kellen, nothing's going to happen. Viola, you don't know her like I do. She's been planning this for over a year. The last message was sent the morning Viola collapsed. Viola, having dinner with him tonight. If Jeffrey seems different afterward, you'll know why. Jeffrey stared at the screen, his vision blurring. Different how? What had Leora been planning to do to him that night? He checked the voice recordings app. 7 files from the past month. Jeffrey pulled out his earbuds and listened to the first one, his hands trembling. Leora's voice, clear and confident. Jeffrey's too logical. He won't suspect the emotional angle. That's his blind spot. He trusts me completely. A man's voice Jeffrey didn't recognize. What if he figures it out? He won't. He's brilliant with machines, but people, he's clueless. He sees what he wants to see. And if something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. I've been planning this for 18 months. Every detail, every contingency. Jeffrey stopped the recording, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. He forced himself to listen to the second file. The same voices, but recorded more recently based on the timestamp. The mother's getting suspicious, the unknown man said. Mom's always been a problem, but not for much longer. You sure about this? Killing family members draws attention. It'll look natural. Heart attack. I've been adjusting her medication for weeks. Jeffrey ripped out his earbuds while rising in his throat. Leora had murdered her own mother. And Jeffrey was next. In the Notes app, he found a detailed log. Viola had been tracking her symptoms. Dizziness, nausea, heart palpitations. She suspected someone was tampering with her medication. Jeffrey copied everything to his own phone. Photos of text messages, downloaded audio files, screenshots of the notes. Then he wiped Viola's phone and put it back in her hands that he sat in his truck outside the funeral home for 20 minutes, staring at the evidence on his phone. Leora was trying to kill him, had killed her own mother, and Jeffrey had walked right into it. But Viola had warned him, given him the tools he needed. Jeffrey started the engine and drove back to his shop. He had work to do. Jeffrey installed the first camera the next morning while Leora was at work. Hidden in the smoke detector above the kitchen table, wireless, motion activated. He'd ordered it online with express shipping, along with 2 others for the bedroom and living room. The devices were small, professional grade, the kind private investigators used. Jeffrey had always been good with electronics. Military training in communications, then years building custom motorcycles with complex electrical systems. Wiring a few surveillance cameras was child's play compared to debugging a vintage Harley's ignition system. He tested each camera from his phone, adjusting angles to capture the entire room. The kitchen camera had a clear view of the table where they ate dinner. The living room camera covered the couch and coffee table. The bedroom camera focused on the dresser where Leora kept her pills and supplements. Jeffrey set up a secure cloud account to store the footage, using an encrypted service that wouldn't show up on their home internet logs. He changed all his passwords, using random combinations of letters and numbers that Leora could never guess. That he created backups of his business accounts, personal files, everything important. Downloaded bank statements going back 3 years. Copied client contracts and project files. If Leora was planning to destroy his reputation, he needed proof of who he really was. By evening, Jeffrey had transformed their home into a surveillance operation. Every room monitored, every conversation recorded, every move documented. When Leora came home from work, she found Jeffrey in his usual spot on the couch, reading a motorcycle magazine. "You're quiet tonight," she said, setting down her purse and kissing his cheek. Her lips felt cold against his skin. "Tired," Jeffrey said. "Big order came in today. Custom build for a collector in Portland. That's good, right? More money." "Yeah, good." Leora moved around the kitchen, preparing dinner. Jeffrey watched her every movement, looking for signs he'd missed before. Did she move differently when she thought no one was watching? Did her smile slip when she turned away? She made chicken and rice, one of his favorite meals. Simple ingredients, hard to tamper with. But Jeffrey had learned not to trust anything she prepared. How was school? Jeffrey asked, cutting his chicken into small pieces. Challenging. That boy I mentioned, the one with the abusive father? Things are getting worse at home. How do you know? The signs are obvious if you know what to look for. Withdrawn behavior. Flinching when adults make sudden movements. Classic indicators. Jeffrey studied her face. Have you met the father? Briefly. Angry man. Defensive when I try to discuss his son's problems. Maybe he's just frustrated. Divorce is stressful. Leora's expression hardened slightly. Abuse is abuse, Jeffrey. There's no excuse for hurting a child. But you don't know for sure that's what's happening. I know enough. Leora stood up and began clearing the dishes. Sometimes you have to act on instinct. Protect the innocent. Jeffrey watched her move around the kitchen, stacking plates with efficient precision. Was she talking about the student or something else? With Leora, every conversation seemed to have hidden layers. That night, Jeffrey lay awake listening to her breathe. How long had she been planning this? Months? Years? And why? They had a good life together. Stable income. No major problems that Jeffrey knew about, unless money was the motive. Jeffrey's business was worth more than he'd realized when they married. The property alone was valuable, prime real estate in a growing city. The client list represented years of relationship building. The custom designs were intellectual property worth hundreds of thousands that if something happened to him, Leora would inherit everything. She'd be a widow, collecting life insurance and sympathy in equal measure. The grieving spouse who tried so hard to help her troubled husband. Jeffrey got up quietly and went to the bathroom. He looked at himself in the mirror. Brown hair, gray at the temples. Lines around his eyes from squinting at welds for 15 years. Ordinary face. Trustworthy face. The kind of face people felt sorry for when it showed up in obituaries, but not anymore. Jeffrey had the cameras now. The recordings. The evidence he needed to prove what Leora was really planning. Over the next week, Jeffrey changed his routine in subtle ways. He started drinking coffee from a travel mug he kept at the shop instead of the pot Leora made at home. Brought lunch in a cooler instead of eating whatever she packed for him. Small changes that looked like new habits, not suspicious behavior. He acted more tired than usual. Distracted. Let Leora think whatever she was doing to him was working. And he documented everything. Every meal, every drink, every conversation, building a case that would destroy her when the time came. The first attack came on a Wednesday morning. Jeffrey was adjusting the carburetor on a Harley when his phone rang. Jeffrey, it's Mike Patterson. I need to talk to you about my bike. Sure. What's wrong? I heard some things. About trouble at home. Anger issues. Jeffrey set down his wrench. What things? Look, I don't want to get involved in personal business. But if you're having problems, maybe you should get help before you finish my bike. Who told you I was having problems? A friend who works at the school district. Said your wife mentioned you've been aggressive lately. Verbal abuse. Jeffrey felt cold. That's not true. Maybe not. But I can't take chances. I'll pick up my bike this afternoon. Pay for the work you've done so far. The line went dead. Jeffrey stared at his phone. Leora worked for the school district. How many people had she talked to? What had she told them? That afternoon, Dr. Rebecca Nash from the middle school called. Mr. Rourke? This is Dr. Nash, the principal at Westside Middle. I work with your wife. Is something wrong? I'm calling because Leora mentioned you've been under stress lately. Having some difficulties at home. What kind of difficulties? She's concerned about your mental health. Said you've been paranoid. Suspicious. She's worried you might need professional help. Jeffrey chose his words carefully. I'm fine, Dr. Nash. Just busy with work. Of course. But if you ever need someone to talk to, I can recommend some excellent counselors. After she hung up, Jeffrey checked his browser history. Someone had accessed his computer. Used it to visit mental health forums, depression support groups. The searches were logged under his user account. He found a blog post on a local community forum. Anonymous, but clearly meant to look like it came from him. My wife says I'm getting paranoid, but I think she's right. I've been having thoughts that don't make sense. Thinking people are against me when they're just trying to help. I know I need help, but I'm scared to admit it. Jeffrey screenshot the post and saved it to his evidence folder. Then he checked his business accounts. Someone had accessed those too. Nothing stolen yet, but the login attempts were logged. That evening, Leora made his favorite dinner. Steak and potatoes. "How was work?" she asked. "Fine. You seem tense." Jeffrey cut his steak into small pieces, studying her face. Mike Patterson canceled his order. "Oh no. What?" Said he heard I was having anger issues. Leora frowned. "That's strange. Where would he hear something like that?" "Good question." She reached across the table and touched his hand. "Maybe you should talk to someone. You have been stressed lately." Jeffrey didn't pull away. "Have I? You've been distant. Suspicious. Remember last week when you thought I moved your tools?" Jeffrey remembered. He'd been looking for a specific wrench and couldn't find it. Leora had suggested he misplaced it. But now he wondered if she'd hidden it deliberately. Created a small moment of confusion she could reference later. "I found the wrench," Jeffrey said. "Where was it?" "Right where I left it." Leora squeezed his hand. "See? That's what I mean. You're doubting yourself. That's not like you." Jeffrey nodded. "Maybe you're right." But inside, he was calculating. Every word she spoke was another piece of evidence. Another nail in her coffin. Jeffrey met Kellen at a diner on the outskirts of Eugene. Neutral ground. Kellen had called that morning, so they needed to talk. "You look like shit," Kellen said when Jeffrey sat down. "Thanks." Kellen was drinking coffee, black. His eyes were bloodshot, but he seemed sober. Focused. "I've been thinking about what Mom said to you," Kellen said. "Run from my daughter." She meant it literally. Jeffrey stirred sugar into his coffee. "Tell me about Warren Bly." Kellen's cup stopped halfway to his lips. "How do you know that name?" "I found texts on your mother's phone. Between you two, before she died." Kellen set down his coffee. "Warren dated Leora in college. Nice guy. Pre-med student. They were together for 6 months. What happened to him?" "Overdose. Sleeping pills mixed with alcohol. Everyone said it was suicide. But you don't think so?" "Warren wasn't suicidal. He was planning to propose to Leora. Had the ring and everything. Then suddenly he's dead." Jeffrey leaned forward. "Why would she kill him?" "Because he found out about the will." "What will?" Kellen pulled out his phone and showed Jeffrey a photo. An old document, yellowed at the edges. "Our father's will. The original. Left everything to Mom and me. Leora got nothing." Jeffrey studied the document. But Leora inherited when he died. Because she falsified a newer will. Made it look like Dad changed his mind before he died. Warren was a witness to the original will. When he started asking questions, Leora got scared. "You have proof of this?" Warren's roommate kept copies of everything. When Warren died, he got suspicious. Gave me all Warren's papers, including a letter Warren was writing to a lawyer about the will. Kellen pulled out a folded paper. Jeffrey read it quickly. Warren describing his concerns about the will's authenticity. Questions about signatures and dates. "Why didn't you go to the police?" Jeffrey asked. "I was 22 and drunk half the time. Who was going to believe me?" Leora was the grieving daughter, honor student, pillar of the community. I was the screw-up brother with a drinking problem. Jeffrey handed back the letter. "What about your mother?" "She knew. Mom figured it out years later. Found inconsistencies in the documents. But when she tried to investigate, Leora threatened her." "How?" "Said she claimed I molested her when we were kids." Complete lie, but Leora is very convincing. Mom knew she'd destroy me if she had to. Jeffrey felt sick. "So your mother stayed quiet to protect me, and because she hoped Leora would change. Get help." But Leora just got better at hiding what she was. Kellen finished his coffee. "Mom left something for you. Gave me a password before she died. Said if anything happened, I should give it to you." He wrote down a string of numbers and letters on a napkin. Cloud storage account. Everything Mom collected on Leora. Screenshots. Audio recordings. Financial records. Jeffrey pocketed the napkin. "Why are you helping me?" "Because Mom asked me to. And because you seem like a decent guy. Leora is going to destroy you if you don't stop her." "She's already started." Kellen nodded. "Then you'd better move fast." Jeffrey accessed Viola's cloud account that night. While Leora slept beside him, he scrolled through years of documentation. Screenshots of Leora's text messages with someone named Bo Salinger. Financial records showing money transferred from Jeffrey's business account to shell companies. Audio recordings of phone conversations where Leora discussed her plans. In one recording, Leora's voice was cold, calculating. Jeffrey's business is worth more than he knows. The property alone is 6 figures. When he's gone, I'll sell everything and disappear. Beau's voice. What about the brother? Kellen's a drunk. No one will believe him. And if he becomes a problem, I have insurance. The abuse allegations. People always believe the victim, especially when she's as sympathetic as me. Jeffrey listened to hours of recordings. Leora had been planning this for over a year, studying Jeffrey's routines, his weaknesses, building her case against him. The next morning, Jeffrey called Nate Kittredge, his oldest friend. They'd served together in Afghanistan, opened their shops next to each other when they got home. I need a favor, Jeffrey said. Name it. Can you handle my business for a few days? I need to disappear. Nate didn't ask questions. Never had. That was the kind of friend he was. Jeffrey packed a bag and left while Leora was at work. He drove to a motel outside town and checked in under a false name. Then he called Samantha Givens. Sam had worked at the middle school until 6 months ago. Left suddenly after what the administration called creative differences. Jeffrey had met her at a community barbecue. Found her sharp and observant. I heard about Viola, Sam said when they met at a coffee shop. I'm sorry. Thank you. I need to ask you about Leora. Sam's expression hardened. What about her? Why did you really leave the school? Sam stirred her latte slowly. I caught her accessing student files she wasn't assigned to. Psych evaluations. Counseling notes. Creating false narratives about abuse in students' homes. Why would she do that? Control. Leora likes having leverage over people. I reported it to HR, but she claimed I was harassing her. Made it look like I was the problem. Did you keep records? Screenshots. Email threads. Everything. Sam leaned forward. Your wife is dangerous, Jeffrey. She destroys people for sport. Jeffrey spent 3 days at the motel, letting Leora think he'd had a breakdown. He called in sick to his shop, ignored her texts and calls. Let her panic build. On the 4th day, Leora filed for separation. A protective order attached, claiming Jeffrey had threatened her and needed psychiatric evaluation. Jeffrey smiled when Nate brought him the papers. She played her hand. What now? Nate asked. Now I play mine. Jeffrey returned home on a Friday evening. Leora was packing boxes in the bedroom, moving efficiently. She looked up when he walked in, her face showing surprise and fear. Jeffrey, I didn't expect you back so soon. I know, he said. Interesting week. You look better. Clearer. Jeffrey sat on the bed, watching her fold clothes. I found some things while I was away. Had time to think. What kind of things? Jeffrey pulled out his phone and played an audio recording. Leora's voice filled the room. Jeffrey's too logical. He won't suspect the emotional angle. That's his blind spot. Leora went pale. Where did you get that? Your mother's phone. She recorded everything. Leora. Every conversation. Every plan. Leora's hand shook as she set down a sweater. You don't understand what you're hearing. I understand perfectly. Jeffrey stood up. Warren Bly. Your father's will. The money you've been stealing from my business accounts. Should I go on? Those are lies. Then explain this. Jeffrey showed her a screenshot from her text messages with Beau Salinger. Discussion of liquidating Jeffrey's assets after his accident. Leora backed toward the door. You're sick, Jeffrey. Paranoid. That's why I filed for protection. Good strategy. Make me look unstable before you kill me. Just like you did with your mother. Mom had a heart attack. Mom was poisoned. Sedatives mixed with her blood pressure medication. The autopsy will prove it. Leora's mask finally slipped. Her face went cold, calculating. No one will believe you. My lawyer will present the evidence Monday morning. Shaylin Brock is very thorough. Jeffrey walked past her to the door. You underestimated the wrong part of me, Leora. I don't just fix machines. I solve problems. Monday morning at the courthouse, Shaylin Brock laid out the case with surgical precision. Screenshots from Viola's phone. Financial records showing fraudulent transfers. Audio recordings of Leora discussing Jeffrey's murder. The judge reviewed the evidence in chambers while Leora sat with her lawyer, looking increasingly desperate. When court resumed, The judge addressed Leora directly. Ms. Greaves-Rourke, based on the evidence presented, I'm dismissing your protective order and issuing a warrant for your arrest. This is insane, Leora said, standing up. Jeffrey fabricated all of this. The judge held up a financial document. This shows systematic theft from your husband's accounts over 18 months. The audio recordings detail your plans to kill him. The medical evidence suggests you poisoned your own mother. Leora looked at Jeffrey. For the first time, he saw genuine fear in her eyes. You'll never prove any of this, she said. Jeffrey smiled. I already have. Bo Salinger was arrested that afternoon. Under threat of murder charges, he confessed to helping Leora plan Jeffrey's death. Provided details about the poisoning method. Confirmed Leora's history of manipulating and destroying people. Leora was denied bail. Too much evidence of flight risk. Too many victims in her past. The prosecutor charged her with attempted murder, fraud, identity theft, and a dozen other felonies. From her jail cell, Leora called Jeffrey once. He let go to voicemail. Jeffrey, please. You know me. I would never hurt you. Someone is setting me up. You have to believe me. Jeffrey deleted the message and sent her a single email. You underestimated the wrong part of me. Goodbye. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Jeffrey testified about finding Viola's evidence. Kellen told the jury about Warren Bly and their father's will. Sam explained how Leora had abused her position at the school. Bo Salinger testified about Leora's plans in detail. How she'd studied Jeffrey's routines. Planned to make his death look like suicide. Practiced her grief for the aftermath. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Leora got 25 years without parole. Jeffrey sold the house 6 weeks after the trial ended. Too many memories lurked in every room. Viola's kitchen, where she'd collapsed. The bedroom where Leora had planned his murder. The living room where they pretended to be a happy couple while she slowly poisoned his life. He moved into a 2-bedroom apartment above his motorcycle shop. Simple space. Clean lines. No reminders of deception or betrayal. From his kitchen window, he could see the workshop where he spent most of his time now. Honest work. Straightforward problems with logical solutions. His business recovered faster than expected. Word had spread through Eugene's tight-knit community about what Leora had done. Instead of sympathy, Jeffrey received respect. People appreciated how he'd handled the situation. Methodical, thorough, no drama or revenge fantasies. Just cold, logical justice. Orders increased steadily. Classic bike restorations. Custom builds for collectors. A waiting list that stretched 6 months out. Jeffrey hired 2 mechanics to help with the basic work while he focused on the complex projects that required his specific skills. Boss, that Ducati's ready for pickup, said Mike Torres, one of his new employees. Former military, like Jeffrey, understood the value of precision and attention to detail. Good. Customers coming at 3. Jeffrey wiped his hands on a shop rag and checked the time. I'll be back in an hour. He drove across town to Eugene's main library, where local journalist Rebecca Morrison was waiting with a laptop and digital recorder. She'd been working on an investigative piece about Leora's abuse of the school system for the past month. I've got the court documents, Rebecca said, spreading papers across the library table. Leora accessed student psychological evaluations she wasn't assigned to. Created false narratives about abuse in at least 12 families. Jeffrey reviewed the documents. Names he recognized from the community. Good families torn apart by Leora's manipulations. How many kids were affected? Jeffrey asked. Hard to say exactly. The school district's being tight-lipped about the full scope. But I've talked to 6 families directly. Parents accused of abuse based on Leora's fabricated reports. What happened to those cases? Dropped once investigators realized the evidence was manufactured. But the damage was done. Marriages destroyed. Children traumatized by being removed from their homes. Lives ruined. Jeffrey thought about the boy Leora had mentioned during their last dinner with Viola. The 12-year-old whose father she'd accused of abuse. How many other children had she used as weapons in her psychological games? The school district's paying settlements, Rebecca continued. 7 figures total. They've also implemented new oversight procedures. Multiple counselors have to verify any abuse allegations before they're reported to authorities. Jeffrey nodded. Good. That should prevent this from happening again. What about you? How are you dealing with everything? Jeffrey considered the question. 6 months ago, he'd been a trusting husband who believed in the fundamental goodness of people. Now he understood that some individuals were capable of extraordinary evil. That evil could wear a caring face and speak with a concerned voice. I'm fine, Jeffrey said. Better than fine. After the interview, Jeffrey drove to the Veterans Center on the outskirts of town. Kellen was waiting in the parking lot, looking healthier than Jeffrey had ever seen him. Clean clothes, clear eyes, 3 months sober and counting. How's the program going? Jeffrey asked. Good days and bad days, but more good lately. Kellen gestured toward the building behind him. We're helping 12 guys right now, all combat veterans having trouble adjusting to civilian life. That's Viola's money you're using. Part of it. Mom left specific instructions about what she wanted done with her estate. Help veterans. Support male abuse victims. Fight the kind of injustice Leora represented. Jeffrey pulled out an envelope containing a cashier's check. $50,000. For the fund. Kellen looked at the amount and whistled. You sure about this? Viola would approve. She believed in fixing problems, not just complaining about them. They walked through the Veterans Center together. Men of different ages working on various projects. Woodworking, mechanics, computer training, purpose-driven activities that provided structure and meaning. You should come to one of our group sessions, Kellen said. Talk about what you went through with Leora. Might help other guys recognize the warning signs. Jeffrey considered it. 6 months ago, he never would have imagined himself as someone who'd survived domestic abuse. The concept hadn't fit his understanding of how relationships worked. Strong men weren't victims. Logical people didn't fall for manipulation, but Leora had proven those assumptions wrong. She'd identified his weaknesses and exploited them systematically. Only Viola's intervention had saved his life. Maybe, Jeffrey said, when I'm ready. On the first anniversary of Viola's death, Jeffrey drove to Mount Calvary Cemetery as autumn painted the hills around Eugene in shades of gold and crimson. The air carried the scent of wood smoke and fallen leaves, crisp with the promise of winter. He parked near the cemetery's main gate and walked across neatly maintained grass to Viola's grave. The headstone was simple granite. No elaborate decorations or emotional inscriptions. Just the facts. Viola Marie Greaves. Born 1965. Died 2024. Beloved mother and friend. Jeffrey set Viola's phone on the headstone. He'd wiped it clean weeks ago, reset it to factory settings. The evidence was no longer needed. Justice had been served. Leora was serving 25 years without possibility of parole. Bo Salinger had received 15 years for conspiracy to commit murder. The phone looked insignificant now. Just another piece of outdated technology. But it saved Jeffrey's life as surely as any weapon or shield. You did more than protect me, Jeffrey said quietly, his voice carrying across the empty cemetery. You taught me to fight smart, to use my brain instead of my fists, to build a case instead of seeking revenge. A breeze moved through the oak trees surrounding the cemetery, scattering yellow leaves across the grave. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell told the hour. Life continuing its steady rhythm while Jeffrey said goodbye to the woman who'd given him a second chance. He thought about Leora, locked in a concrete cell 200 miles away. She tried to call him twice since the trial. Jeffrey had blocked her number without listening to the messages. Some bridges, once burned, should stay burned. I hope you're at peace, Jeffrey said, knowing she can't hurt anyone else. Jeffrey stood there for several more minutes, watching clouds drift across the autumn sky. Then he turned and walked back to his truck. He didn't look back at the grave. The past was finished. Viola's warning had been heeded. Her sacrifice had meaning. Jeffrey drove home to his simple apartment above the shop, where honest work waited and the future stretched ahead like an open road. He'd survived Leora's trap not through luck or chance, but through careful planning and methodical execution. Sometimes the logical approach was exactly the right approach. In his apartment that evening, Jeffrey opened a bottle of beer and sat on his couch. reviewing the week's work orders. 3 custom builds. 2 vintage restorations. A steady stream of income from people who valued quality craftsmanship. His phone buzzed with a text message from a potential client. Someone in Seattle wanted a custom Harley built for cross-country touring. Big project. Good money. Honest work. Jeffrey typed his response, then set the phone aside. Outside, Eugene settled into its evening rhythm. Families having dinner. Students studying for exams. People living normal lives in a community where children were safer because one predator had been removed. Jeffrey had played his part in that protection. Used his skills to solve a problem that could have destroyed multiple lives. He'd chosen logic over emotion, evidence over accusations, justice over revenge. The apartment felt peaceful. Clean. Free of lies and manipulation. Jeffrey finished his beer and went to bed, sleeping without dreams for the first time in months.